Welcome to Space Startup Live again. So I do this every week at the same time. So it'll be Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depending where you're tuning in from. And thank you for joining. And we have Marty in the house already. Time for some more space goodness. That's the idea. Oh yes, before I forget, I have X account at Space Startup Hub. So if you have an X account, you can follow me on there. I post my videos on there usually and reply to certain comments. There's actually a comment I replied to on nuclear fusion, which is the first video I'm going to talk about. So anyway, so let's get into the first video. There it is. So I'll put myself in the corner. So this is Zephyr Fusion orbiting fusion reactors in space. So there's various startups working on fusion reactors on Earth. But if you've looked at any of the videos, you'll see there's massive amount of metal and concrete, steel and pipes and plumbing and cryogenic components. And that is because you have to maintain a vacuum. Fusion doesn't work without a vacuum. And on Earth, of course, it's very difficult to create a vacuum. And therefore, that's why you need all the metal and so on. But in space, there's a perfect vacuum, near perfect vacuum in space for free. So that means you don't need all the reactor chambers or anything like that. You could just use a very powerful magnetic field. And you can kind of see from this image here, right in the center of this field is this superconducting coil. And this would be like 1 to 1.5 meters. And it's wrapped with this high temperature superconducting tape. And it can generate a powerful magnetic field, and then you inject into that the propellant or the fuel, which would be deuterium and various other, deuterium, tritium, or whatever it is, and then you heat that up to extremely high temperatures, tens or hundreds of millions of degrees, and that will cause fusion, and then you generate electricity. And I know there's comments about how do you generate electricity, so I'll get to that. We're in the comment section. But first of all, this is a graphic I put in the video. It's not a very good graphic, but you can basically see that the bigger you make the magnetic field, the more fusion you can get, because basically the fusion particle is more likely to, the longer the path, the more likely it is to collide with something else and generate fusion. So you generally want your field to be big. Now on Earth, that means you have to make your reactor big, which means you need much more material, metal, steel, piping, whatever. So, and we have Christine in the house. Yo. So thank you for joining. So basically, for reactors, you want them to be big, which is a problem on Earth because it gets very expensive to make them big. Well, in space, it doesn't. All you need to do in space is just increase the size of the magnetic field, which means you just make the coil bigger. That's it, right? Because you have the vacuum in space. There's no need for a reactor chamber. So that's the idea. And Marty's saying, if you can make this work, imagine space stations without flimsy solar panels. Yeah. People are talking about gigawatt data centers and so on. Well, where's all the power coming from? It requires millions of solar panels and so on. So a fusion reactor makes a lot of sense. So here's an example of the size of the magnetic field. So this is ITER, which is a $65 billion facility that's been under construction for like 20 years. Very, very expensive. And you can see the size of the magnetic field. And that's constrained because of the reactor, right? The reactor chamber is large and expensive, but in space this is potentially the size of the magnetic field, much bigger, and all you need is this reactor coil, the superconducting coil right in the center there. So there's a lots of advantages of putting into space, and you don't even need a Starship. Just a Falcon 9 will do. This reactor is perhaps something like 15 tons in total. And you can see from the graphic, I mean, this is all the satellite stuff, reaction control thrusters and station keeping and all the usual stuff. And here you have the superconducting coil. and then obviously you must have to be able to inject the fuel into the reactor. But basically, it's quite simple and not that heavy. So, and let's have a look at this. This is a very important graphic, which I'll be referring back to when we get to the comments, because yeah, it's relevant. But basically, any fusion system is probably going to start with the top row. It's going to start with the deuterium tritium just because it's easier. It's more available. The problem is you have this little thing here. You can see it's a neutron, and these get ejected from the system at very high speed, some percentage of the speed of light, and you can't really control them because they're neutral. So basically, you do need some kind of shielding to protect your components. And for systems on the Earth, this is how you generate electricity. You have the reactor blanketed with water or steam or something, and the neutrons hit that at very high speed, generating steam, which drives a turbine, which generates electricity. So this is the initial way you do things. But what you really want to get to is at the bottom here, deuterium and helium-3. If you can get helium-3, you'll notice one thing that's not produced: no neutrons, which means you don't need any neutron shielding. And you can generate electricity directly, which is not the case with the other methods. So that's the advantage of using helium-3. But the disadvantage is you have to go to the moon to get it. Helium-3 is extremely rare on Earth, and it's already, there's a supply crunch already. So really, you'd have to mine this on the moon. So I've covered various companies that are doing that already, Interloon and Magna Petra. So yeah, so that's the fuel, and I think I've covered the basis. Of course, there are some challenges still, as always. You basically have to levitate the superconducting coil, and you have to decide how you're going to heat up the plasma to begin with. But I think I say in the video, you can use radio frequency heating. It works very well in space, and it's not a big component, so there shouldn't really be a problem with that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's very interesting, and there's a new stealth startup called Zephyr Fusion that's working on this problem, and hopefully we'll hear more about them. So let's get on to the comments on this one. So we had a comment from Sophian K75, and he's saying, for space data centers, sure, why not? How is the energy of the plasma converted into electricity? Would it be more efficient to convert it into another form of energy than electricity if the goal was to send it to be converted on Earth? Boil water, spin steam turbine. Yeah, this is have a look at this graphic. This is how it's going to happen initially. You have to surround the magnetic field to go to the magnetic field. It would have to be surrounded by something, first of all, to capture the neutrons. That would heat that material, water or steam or whatever, and then that would be used to spin a turbine to generate electricity, some kind of generator. So that's what happens on Earth. The efficiency is like 35–40%. It's not great, but again, if you can get to helium-3, there's a way more efficient way you can do that, and that is you can generate electricity directly. And the reason is because you have positive and negative particles. You have hydrogen, which is just a proton, so that's positively charged. You have electrons from the plasma, which are negatively charged, and you're in a magnetic field, so you can separate those particles, creating a voltage gradient. And as that moves past the conductor, it induces a voltage in the conductor, which is electricity. So that's done directly, no moving parts, no mechanical parts. So this is highly efficient, 70–90%, but you do need a helium-3. So Marty's saying here, assuming this works in orbit, it could also be used for power on the moon, asteroid mines, and even to power spaceships. Yeah, I don't think there's any reason you couldn't do that. And the advantage of the moon is that's where the best fuel is, helium-3. which is on the surface. It's like 1 inch. It's the topsoil. You just sift the topsoil and you're going to get a certain amount of helium-3, which you can then use to fuel a fusion reactor. So the moon is a great place for fusion reactors. And we have your 20 downrange. Let's go to space and boil water. 21st century technology pushing 19th century equipment. Well, as I said, depending on your fuel mix, you may be able to generate electricity without steam turbines. Although initially they probably would be needed. And then we have mod IAC saying 1 word, micrometeoroids. And the reply from Sophian is 2 words, Whipple shield. And yeah, so the Whipple shield is basically, it's just a series of metal plates, and an impactor hits the first plate, goes through it but loses a lot of energy, hits the second plate, perhaps goes through it but loses more energy, and then eventually it gets to the third plate and doesn't get through. So you have these series of metal sheets. They're used on all the satellites, so it's well understood technology. Yeah, so we can deal with that. That's not a problem. So I think that's all. Oh no, do we have some more? Do we have some more? Oh, yeah, I've done that one already. Oh yeah, so we have some more here. So no mention of how to capture the energy from fusion reaction. It would need to enclose the entire magnetic field with chamber walls having a flowing fluid to absorb the heat and bring the heat to the generator. That would be really big structure. And then we have CPT Nemo saying, unless there is a way to generate energy from fusion and fission that doesn't require 19th century steam mechanics, nuclear power will never reach its full potential for society. And we have Elias Ainsworth saying, this is a complete false assumption. Steam turbines are used for their efficiency in converting heat to electricity, not their historical context. All the other ways we know of how to capture power from a fusion reaction, such as charged particle conversion, light conversion, etc., also require that we wrap the structure. Furthermore, all those other methods have demonstrated efficiencies of 30% on the high, whereas steam turbines are close to 60%. And then CPT replies, so there is a system of energy production that doesn't require the wrapping of the plasma volume to reduce the added mass to orbit. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of backwards and forth on this question of how to generate electricity. So this is from Grok, and basically you can see this is your deuterium tritium mix. This is the standard mix. This is what everyone's using on Earth, and then you've got deuterium helium-3. So you can see the difference is you can directly produce electricity. And there's the methods electrostatic and magnetohydrodynamics, 70 to 90% efficiency direct. The reactor chamber, the plasma will be at 200 to 500 million degrees, so it's hotter than DT, but it gives you direct electricity. So it's also very compact and gives you high voltage DC directly. So there you go. And we already have a huge working fusion reactor in space. It's called the Sun. So we know it works. We know fusion works in space because, yeah, we get energy from the sun. So yes, definitely it is possible to generate electricity directly, but it can't be done yet because we have well, we do have some helium-3, but it's already very scarce and it's very expensive. So I don't think any space startup is going to start with helium-3. But once we start mining it on the moon, helium-3 is the perfect fuel to use in a fusion reactor. And you can generate electricity directly, and you don't need neutron shielding because it doesn't produce neutrons. Also, it produces more electricity than any other mix. And it can even produce hydrogen. So it's very helium-3 is definitely the fuel to use. And Christine saying we need to learn and develop a better way to use sun as an energy source. Well, I mean, that's what solar panels are for. The efficiency is not great, but over time, hopefully, the efficiency goes up. on solar panels. I think I've covered everything for that one there. So let's move on to the second video. And this is shared lunar infrastructure, introducing the Lunar Development Cooperative. So I've done several videos already on having lunar infrastructure already on the moon that startups and other companies could just tap into. So you'd have off-board power, you'd have off-board thermal management, and you can imagine communications, internet, PNT, position navigation, timing, and roads, rail, warehouses, habitats, like landing pads. You can go on and on and on, right? So basically, that would be very good. The question is, who's going to own, operate, maintain, upgrade all this shared infrastructure? Because companies generally prefer monopolies, they can charge more. So this is the idea of the Lunar Development Cooperative, a framework for the sustainable development of space. And this was written by Michael Castle-Miller. One thing I didn't say in the video is that this is also in the DARPA Field Guide, chapter 18, but it's only like 3 pages long, and it's written by the same author anyway. So the video is based on his much bigger white paper explaining the Lunar Development Cooperative. So I saw this graphic the other day when I was watching a YouTube video, but basically it gives you an idea of the kind of infrastructure I'm talking about. You got communication towers, you got fission surface power, that's a nuclear reactor. You got maybe mobility as a surface, you got rovers, you got landing pads, launch pads, you got power system, solar, and so on. Fuel cell, you've got power storage, distribution, optical power beaming, you've got lunar data relay satellites. So there's an absolute huge amount of infrastructure you need. And the idea is a Lunar Development Cooperative. That organization is responsible for building, financing, operating, maintaining, and upgrading that infrastructure. And it's just available to space startups. You land, and then you can plug in power. You've got thermal management, you've got communications, it's all kind of there for you already. And there's this graphic here. I'm not sure if I put this in the video or not, but basically you've got like power systems. This is astrobotic, vertical solar arrays. You've got a landing pad, so you don't get ejector and debris when you land or take off. Lunar roads, just safer to travel. And then communications and position navigation and timing. I've covered Lunar Saber masts, which can be 100 meters tall. In fact, I have a graphic here. So Lunar Saber, which is, this is Honeybee Robotics, which is owned by Blue Origin now. And they're building these lunar masts. They can be, there's a small one at 16 meters, and then there's a 30-meter one, and then a massive 100-meter one, and you can put 1 ton of payload on the top. So you can have laser range finding, you can have communications, power beaming, you can put solar panels on the side, and also you can use this for thermal management as well, as I said in the video on thermal management. So potentially you've got something like that. You've got landing pads with berms and roads connecting them. So this is where you land and take off without generating debris. And and here's the construction of a landing pad. You can see a starship in the background. So this is the kind of infrastructure we need to build on the moon. And also there's an example here of Lunar Rail, which is something, Lockheed Martin has proposed. I don't know if I've covered it already. Yeah, I've done a video on Lunar Rail. So potentially that's very useful for moving large amount of mass quite quickly and efficiently. So once you do lunar resource mining, you want Lunar Rail to move all the regolith around. And there's another graphic here, and this is kind of the thing. These 2 craters, and you've got roads, and here these yellow dots are peaks of eternal light. So you'd have solar panels here that would collect the sun's energy, and you got a landing pad here. The white spots are landing pads. And you'd have all roads connect it all together. And then we have Christian saying humanity needs to open and start thinking in a huge scale not meters but kilometers, but tens of kilometers. Yes. So we need a lot of infrastructure, a lot of roads, and a lot of rail, a lot of power systems, power grids, communication grids that scale a large amount of area. And then we have things like, this is the power grid. This is Astrobotic with their Lunar grid technology, which they're sending a demo called Lunar Grid Lite, I think in a year or so. So this is going to the moon. Basically, you just have these vertical solar arrays, and they're connected with a cable, and you just position these around the moon, and you've got a power grid. That's the idea. And yes, so here's the idea of the infrastructure plan. So the first couple of years, you're just scanning the moon, figuring out where the mineral concentrations are, the key locations, where the resources are, and then you deploy orbital telecommunication satellites. This is the lunar data relay satellites, and then also you can provide insurance to lunar operators just to make it a bit cheaper to operate on the moon. And then years 3 to 7, this is when you create the site registry, which is the key thing. So you can't own anything on the moon, but you could give exclusive access to a particular location, such as a crater, an area of high mineral concentration. And basically the site registry, you say, this is the registered activity and all the other members won't interfere, which gives, exclusive access to extract materials, process them and sell them. So that's the site registry. And then I said you'd build all the infrastructure, landing pads, power systems, also provide emergency rescue services, and establish reserves of water, food, fuel, critical supplies. And then 7 to 20 years, then you do the surface transportation network. That's roads, rail gun to propel material off the lunar surface and into orbit. Create strategic reserves at key locations, and then build a lunar recycling facility, including biological waste, and that will connect up to all the members' habitats. So you process raw materials, waste materials into something that's more useful. And then a lunar elevator, which is basically a cable that goes from the surface into orbit, and you can take an elevator into orbit. That's not practical on Earth because of the gravity, but it actually does work on the moon. It's a lot easier to do on the moon. And things like healthcare and so on, and comprehensive disaster response. That is, it can handle like a habitat breach or equipment failure or something like that. Space weather events. So that's the plan for the Lunar Development Corporation. And so a few of the comments were Marty saying, this is humanity we are talking about. First come, first serve, followed by battle for control will be the norm. So basically just a free-for-all, and winner takes all, I guess. In terms of space elevator, Christian's saying space elevator, 100 kilometer wide on Earth, 400 kilonewtons high to reach high Earth orbit. After that, we can ship to space, huge solar panels. Space elevator on Earth requires very strong materials, which I don't think we have or produce in high quantities. It's not physically impossible. It's just like the material science isn't quite there yet. But on the moon, you could use Kevlar. We already have the materials to do a space elevator on the moon. On Earth, it's much more difficult. I had a dream saying probably will happen, but only after at least a few companies have set up operations on an industrial scale on the moon. And then Christian's comment, which I've edited, basically saying challenge to the USA. NASA thinks anyway that the only moon and bosses every other country about that and dictate it's to every other agency other than China. And then he goes on to say we don't need any kind of corrupt cooperative on the moon. We don't need a moon director or minister of the moon or anything like that. Let the moon be as open as it is. No one could own the moon. And if Elon wants to land humans and occupy some area of the moon, let him do that. Whatever. Other than like harming the Earth, don't do anything dangerous. And then he calls me out for being anti-Chinese. Basically, don't put your personal attachments or whatever on China towards others out of context. Yeah, basically, I'm just calling it the way I see it. Basically, I think China has a lot of issues with its regional neighbors, and I think I see this quite likely we're going to have conflict on the moon, because this is perhaps another video, but if you look at where all the resources and the key locations are on the moon, they're in very close proximity to each other. If you bring up this graphic, there's a few. The craters are on the South Pole. You've got peaks of eternal light. You've got the high area, and it's within tens of kilometers of each other. So everyone will be going to almost the same location and operating within very close proximity. So a clash or conflict seems quite likely, especially since NASA is mandated not to talk to China. It can't do legally without permission from the US government. So with no way to communicate and with operating very closely, I can see there being issues in the future. That's my opinion, but maybe that's another video. One thing I want to do, because I kind of covered the 2 videos now, is I think I've got this already lined up, or I will do in a minute, is, let's see if I can do this. If I want to bring up, if I can bring it up, yeah, I was going to do a tier list, just a little bit of fun. See if I can bring it up here, see whether it works. And I just have to remove that, bring it onto stage. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so this is, I wanted to do this last week. This is my opinion of who's going to be able to land on the moon in 2028. So before I do that, though, if I can bring this to stage. No, that's not what I want to bring to stage. Basically, yes, I'm not gonna include ESA's Argonaut, because it's not really a private lander. It's done by the ESA consortium, so I'm not going to include that in the list. But anyway, let's get onto this list and do this. So first of all, we have SpaceX, which I'm going to put up here because I think it's well under. It's been in development for quite a while now, and by 2028, I think there's a good chance it will have landed, even the uncrewed version. So I think there's a very good chance that SpaceX will land on the moon by 2028. And in terms of Blue Origin, again, I'm going to put Blue Origin here because they will be launching to the moon in January 2026. It's already built. I saw photos of the Mark 1 lunar lander the other day. So it's ready to go to the moon. So yes, that will be landing before 2028 for sure. Firefly Aerospace, again, is, I mean, I can put that way up here as well. They've already landed on the moon successfully in the previous year. So they've got other landers they're working on. So there's a very good chance they'll be on the moon by 2028 again. iSpace is working on a larger lander. They tried twice, but not been successful. So Christians, why do you attack on China? After all, China so far did not make any moves against anyone on the moon included. That's true, and they don't really think it's a space race. It's Americans who say it's a space race. But it's a question of, like, is there going to be a clash between US and China? And I just think I can see that happening. I could be wrong. Maybe there won't be any clash, but I guess we'll find out. So anyway, so Impulse Space, which I did a video on the other week, they're working on a medium-tier lunar lander, which will be able to put 3 tons on the lunar surface. And they're executing quite well. Their Helios space tug should launch next year in 2026. So they're in a good position to be able to do a lander by 2028. Whether it can land successfully, I have no idea, but I guess we'll see. Intuitive Machines, I'm going to put here because they've landed twice on the moon, but it fell over both times. But they're learning, you know, and they've got a third one, and they've got a fourth lunar lander. So I think they will figure out how to land successfully on the moon soon. So I'm quite positive about Intuitive Machines. They've got quite a lot of money now, and they're expanding into other areas. So they're quite a big company. So I think they can still continue to land on the moon. And if it doesn't succeed, they can try again. Astrobotic is really down here. They had the Peregrine lunar lander. It didn't get out of Earth's orbit. It had a fuel leak, and it crashed back into Earth. So they're trying again, but this is more like, I'm not sure how successful they're going to be. We'll have to see. But there's definitely question marks about whether Astrobotic can land safely on the moon. Hopefully they can, and that would be great. And then we have Draper, which is kind of a dark horse. I don't really know much about this consortium. Draper's leading it. iSpace is involved, I believe, as well. But it's a completely new design for a lander, so I don't really know anything about it. So I'm going to put it down there. So basically, anyway, this is just a bit of fun. Like, these are the lunar landers that I'm aware of that are private landers. So I'm not talking about government space agency landers. And so this is my opinion of like the chances of them landing in 2028 or landing again in 2028. So. Anyway, yeah, that was just a quick thing I did. The thing is, I want to do more tier lists, but I never get around to doing them. So I thought, why not just add it to the live stream, for a bit of fun. So anyway, that is everything I want to cover this week. So thank you for joining, and I will see you next time.